Hello folks. Today let's learn how to use AppScript with Google Sheets so that we can build a new sheet for each student based on a template we have in our sheet. So let's get started. Let's do sheets.new, and that should create a brand new spreadsheet. I'm going to rename this make sheet for students project. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I like to save this right away, so I think I'll move it into I think I'll make it into a new folder. I'll call this folder make new project. So I'll be able to find this a lot more easily. I'm going to make that new folder in Google Drive and move it here. So let's get started. In this case, I'm going to want three sheets. I'm going to want my users. I think I'll just name that sheet users, and then I'm going to go ahead and create another sheet. I'm going to call it roster, and then I'm going to create another sheet, and I'm going to call it, in this case, I'm going to call it daily. It's a sheet that I might want students to use. So in my users sheet, I really only need two columns, so I'm going to immediately do Command Shift right arrow, get all the way to the end, and delete those extra columns. And I really don't need more than like 25 rows, so I'll do on row 26, Command Shift down, and get rid of all these extra rows. So that's going to kind of help me with what I need for this. And then, honestly, my roster only needs two columns as well. So you know what I'm going to do to make this even easier? I'll just delete this, and I'll go ahead and take my users column, and I'll duplicate it, and I'll call it roster. And then for my daily sheet, I already have a daily sheet I made. I think I'll just copy this data, make it easier. I want my sheet to look something like this, for instance. It could be anything, but let's say I want something to look a little bit like this. And then I could use my extension. I like to use my crop to data extension, and then I get rid of all my extra rows and columns. And in this case, I might decide to make these a little bit wider. So that's going to be my sheet. I want to make a copy of this for every one of my students. And on here, I'm going to need my student name, and I'm going to need their email. And I might just lock that row up there, and I might go ahead and make that bold, and I might make these a little bit wider. So I have that, and then on my users, I'm going to need a couple of things here on my users tab. Let me clean this up right away. So in the first one, I'm going to call it users, and then I'm going to need to get a drive URL, which we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then I'm going to need to get that drive ID. We're going to be using that in the scripts. And then on the third row, see the drive URL, we need to actually get these. And then in this fourth row, we'll have a name, and we'll have a student sheet URL. Okay, great. So we might clean this up here, make that bold. We might widen these things out a little bit, something like that. Clean up the typing error, and we might lock the row down to here. And that could work. We could also take this and make it big, 18, bold, make it black, make the text white, center, and go ahead and merge that. There we go. So we're going to get the drive ID, and we'll show you in a moment what that's going to be. So, okay, we've got our sheet set up. Let's go ahead now, and let's actually put something in for our roster so we can see how this works. I'm going to put in a name, Tom Turkey is going to be my first student. I have to put in a valid email address, so I'll have one I use here. So I can make sure that this is actually shared with somebody and they'd be able to open it up. So we'll just start with that. So we're using AppScript. Let's get started. This is a brand new project. And what I would do with this brand new project, the first thing is I would say make student, you can call it anything, but I'll call it make student sheets. And let's go ahead and rename this. And one of the other things I like to do immediately is get rid of that boilerplate function. And let's take a look now at what we might start typing. So one of the first things we're going to need is a const. And I'm going to put some global variables in here. The const UI is equal to spreadsheet app. And that's going to be spreadsheet app dot get UI. And you see that auto-filling for me. And then you have to use the brackets, and it's best practice to put a semicolon after your statement. Our next const is going to be SS, because we're going to name the spreadsheet app. And I usually use SS, so this is spreadsheet app dot get active spreadsheet. And we can see that right there. And then we want to go ahead and close that out. And our third const that we're going to use is users. I'm going to use these users, and that's going to be equal to ss dot get sheet by name. You can see that popping up, autofill. And the sheet that I want to get is users. So I enclose that in single quotes, users, and go over and semicolon. Okay, now let's write my function. My function is, when you spell it right, it pops up for you. So this is a function, and we're going to call it make new sheets. And a standard practice is to not use caps. When you use caps, it turns them red. I'm not sure if that's what you want. So we're going to have a function called make new sheets. And notice I capitalize, no spaces, but I capitalize the words in there. So make new sheets. I use the open brackets, and then I use my curly brackets, and I give myself a little space so I can start typing in my function. Let's see if I can come in here. So let's just leave a little space there. So my function is, the first thing we need is a const, and I'm going to call it source. And the source is equal to, again, spreadsheet dot get sheet by name. And in this case, my source is roster. So I'm going to spell it right, roster. And that's going to be my first constant, semicolon. And what I might want to do then is get another constant, call it R for range, and that's going to be equal to source, because now I've defined the source, dot get range. And I'm going to get this range, and the range I'm going to do is row 2, column 1, and I want to get source dot get last row. Let's see, did I spell something? Let's see, it should be source dot get last row. Source dot get last row. And then we need to source get last row, comma, get values. This is an autofilling, so I got something quite not right. Must have had a wrong letter in there. So it's going to be source, and that pops up, dot get last row. So I want the last row, and then I don't actually want the last row. I want one less than the last row, -1, and then I want to get that number of rows, and I want to get 2 columns of data, and then I want to get those values, dot get values, and that should bring us those values. So what I want to do now is I want to actually test this. So console.log, we want to log R, and I want to see what that gets us. I'll go ahead and save. So I've got my function started and I've got it saved, and I want to test and see if I'm going to get, when I console log R, I want to see if I actually get the data that's here, that data. So let's check and see. First time I run my script, I do have to give it permissions, and we are going to allow that. We're going to have to run this one more time because we're going to add more things. Hey, there we go. So I'm getting the data that I was hoping to get, and I can now use that data in my function. And then we need one other constant in here. We're going to do const sheet to copy, because we're going to copy a sheet that we already have in our sheet, and that's going to be equal to ss.getSheet by name, and the sheet that we're going to make a copy of I've named daily. You might name yours something different. So let's just take a look and see what that's doing. Again, here's my user sheet. Here's my roster that we have. We got that data. We know we're talking to that. And then I'm going to want to make a copy of this sheet for each student. So that should take us down to the next section. So what we want to do now is for each, I want to do r dot for each. So for each row that it finds in that range, I want to do a function, and I want that function to be the row. And we'll go ahead, and then we should be able to hit enter. And I want to say at this point, if row, so that we got to put in another, I'm going to drop this down a little bit. So if row, I think I need to put that in parentheses, if row, the row, the first position in the row is not empty, is what that's saying. Then if row is not empty, then I'm going to have a function happen. So if row not empty, what we want to have happen here is I have a const, and my const is going to be new sheet name. My new sheet name is going to be equal to row 0. That's going to name the sheet with the name that's on that row. And const user email, new const that we're creating, is going to be row 1, row and bracket 1. That means the second position in that row. And then we need a const new sheet URL, and that is going to be my new sheet URL is going to use the spreadsheet app. The spreadsheet app dot create. That's going to create a new sheet. And the new sheet I want to create, I want to give it a name. It's going to be called new sheet name. And new sheet name should show up. And then I want to get the URL of that new sheet that just got created. So get URL. And that should take care of that. Then my next step is going to be a constant new sheet ID. So new sheet ID is going to be equal to, again, the spreadsheet app dot open by URL. We're going to actually open that spreadsheet that we just got, and that's going to be the new sheet URL, which we just created. Notice these are auto-filling for me. And then we're going to get the ID dot get ID. And okay, next we need a new, now we need to know where to put that that next sheet namespace. I want to be able to write that back. So const is going to be next sheet namespace. My next sheet namespace, I'll call it, and that's going to be equal to users. Now users we defined up above, and that's going to be users.getRange, because we want to get the range from that users sheet, and that range is going to be users, because I need to find the last row, dot get last row. We want to get that last row, and we want to add one to that because I don't want to write on the last row. And then I need to get column 1, and then I want to get the A1 notation of that, because I'm going to be using that A1 notation in let's see. Okay, and then another const is going to be next URL space. So next URL space, our next URL space is going to be equal to users. And actually, I say myself a little time, it's going to be the same as this, except I'm going to get the second column. Okay, so then we got our next URL space. Then we need to get a folder ID. So we have a const, because I want to move this into a folder. So folder ID is going to be equal to, let's see, we're going to get ss dot get sheet by name. We're going to get the sheet by name, and the sheet by name we're going to get is users, because we're going to put that folder ID in users. And then we're going to dot get range, and we're going to put that user ID in B3, and I'll show you that when we get there. Okay, and I think we're getting close here. Let's see what happens. And then we want const folder, and const folder is going to be equal to drive app dot, we need to get the folder by ID, so get folder by ID, and that folder by ID that we want to get is the folder ID that we just created. So we can do that, and then our next const is const file, and the file is going to be equal to drive app dot get file by ID, and the file ID that we need to get is the new sheet ID, and we've got access to that now. Okay, so we're making good progress here. The next step is I want to take that file dot move to, and you don't notice that popped up, and I want to move it to folder, which I have just defined. And then our next step would be file, add editor. So I want that my student can edit the file. So file, add editor is going to be user email. File.add editor, I should be able to see user email. I must have something wrong with my user email. Let's stop and check that. So I'd misspelled const there. It didn't have the S in const. So a const user email, that pops up for me, and we're going to add the editor to that. Okay, so now our next step is to users dot get range, and that range is going to be the next URL space, and we want to set value. and we want to set a value. Next let's see, users, misspelled that again. Users.get URL space dot get the range dot set value, and that value we want to set is the new sheet URL, and we have access to that. And then users dot get range, because the next thing we want to do is get the range of the next sheet namespace, and we want to that next sheet namespace. Oh, okay, wait. Next sheet namespace. Then we want to set value. Users.get range next. We need to close that out. Dot set value, and that value is going to be new sheet name. Let's see how close we are to making this work. And I see one flag up there by that if statement. We got to figure that out. But let's finish typing this out. A few more things we need to do. And then after the users, we have another constant, and that constant is going to be new sheet. New sheet. We better call that new sheet. We haven't named that constant yet. Is equal to spreadsheet app dot open by URL, and we're going to open up the new sheet URL, which we have access to. Okay. Next is going to be sheet to copy. So we are opening up that new sheet to copy dot copy to new sheet. We're going to copy that daily to our new sheet, and then new sheet dot delete sheet, because when you create it, delete sheet, what we're going to delete is new sheet dot get sheet by name, because when you create a new sheet, you're going to end up with a sheet 1 in it, and we want to get rid of sheet 1. And then delete sheet, get sheet by name, sheet 1. And then I think almost the last step is new sheet dot get sheet by name. And that sheet by name is going to be, that we want to get is copy of daily, which is what we had just pushed over there. And we want to set the name of that, set name to daily. Okay, so let's stop and take a look at this and make sure that we have all of our syntax correct. And I think our problem here with this if there is that we need to open up a bracket for that row function, and then this function needs to go down and close out, I believe, needs to close out after, yeah, we're going to want to move that bracket, which I have highlighted, we're going to want to move that bracket to there. And I think that should, let me look one more time, see if we have that right. And I think that we need to move this bracket to the outside of that. There we go. That moves away all of our what looked to be errors. I could backspace off a little bit here. Let's go ahead and save this. And what we want to do now is give this a test run. I think it looks right. I don't see any errors. When we run this, make new sheets. Now let's take a look here. Here's our users tab. Right now we don't have anything. Oh, and also we don't have a drive ID folder. So what we need to do is take a look. We moved this into a make new projects folder. So let me open that drive folder. I need to make, I could have all of it go in here. That'll work. So let me just grab this drive folder and copy it. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Go ahead and we want to copy this drive URL, and here we have to come in and put our drive URL in our user sheet. And then we need a regex formula, and I'm going to grab that regex formula from a location and copy it. We're going to go ahead and paste a regex formula in here, and that regex extract formula is taking this URL and extracting this ID. And if you take a look at this, you can see it's the ID starts at 1 and ends at S, and that should be what we see here. So we have that piece now, and we have one person on our roster. We have our daily sheet. Let's see what happens if we run this. Now, the first time we run it, and there's a couple things we could do that we haven't done yet, and I think I'll real quickly just copy and paste here. I like to use an onOpen function and add a menu to my source. So I'm going to go ahead and do that real quick here. I'm going to create an onOpen function. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then I'm going to switch to my onOpen function, and I'm going to run it. And we are going to have to authorize again because we've added one other thing here that wasn't in earlier, and we have to authorize that. And we'll see if this onOpen function works, and if it does, when I come back over here, I should see a utility menu, add bulk users. So let's give this a run and see if we were successful. Here's our users tab. If I run my utility, it's already been authorized. What I should see is not that. Let's see what we got wrong here and go ahead and clean it up. So when we run this from the script here, I can see that the error is on line 28. So if I look here, that folder ID is what's erroring out, and I can see the issue here is that we never got that value. So dot get value, and actually it's just get value. We never got that value, which is what was needed to find that folder ID. Now I believe I can run this. Let's go ahead and look at it from here. If I run this, I think this time we won't get the error. And what we'll see here is a new file for that student's name that we had in there. Let's see if we got it. There we go, Tom Turkey. And his sheet URL comes in, and we have successfully made a copy for Tom Turkey. And if we come back and take a look in our project folder, there's the Tom Turkey folder. So you, as a person that's created this, actually owns this file, but it's, if we take a look at that file, Tom Turkey, I've got it open twice now, but let me come back and take a look at it. You'll see that that file is shared with Tom Turkey, so he'd be able to run that. So that's it. We have successfully started from scratch. We built 3 different sheets on this spreadsheet, and then we set it up so that we could save our files to a Google Drive folder, and we wrote all that in this little bit of code that we see right here. I hope you enjoy this, and if you do, subscribe to the channel.